Hi, this is Sally's Book Club. Tune in daily as we explore global literary gems for you. I'm Woo Hai-yoon, and today I'll be unpacking the book The Second Sex for you. Our era claims gender equality, but is that truly the reality?
If we observe our surroundings, the conclusion might be not really.
For instance, the stigmatization of women never ceases. A successful career woman gets labeled as mannish or unfeminine.
Female PhD holders become stereotyped as the third gender.
Their advisors might casually tweet complaints about them, stealing men's opportunities.
More alarmingly, women endure various prejudices and constraints from childhood.
Young girls get told, "Don't be too rowdy. Don't act like boys." Even top-performing students get dismissed as mere memorizers. Warned boys will surpass you once they apply themselves.
In workplaces, women face lower pay and fewer promotions than male colleagues.
Add the constant pressure to marry, bear children, and have second babies. Why does this persist? For answers, you need to understand The Second Sex. This book is hailed as essential reading for women. Its famous thesis, "One is not born but becomes a woman," authored by French philosopher Simone de Beauvoir. Sociologist Lee Yin-hye calls Beauvoir the pinnacle of feminist thought. Beauvoir began writing this in 1945, post-WWII Europe. Western feminism had already evolved for over a century then. Beauvoir herself benefited from feminist progress. She accessed elite French education, became a celebrated writer and existentialist philosopher. Her achievements surpassed many male contemporaries.
Yet even she experienced the struggles of womanhood.
She recognized society's persistent, male-centered structure. Thus, Beauvoir decided to write a book addressing her personal dilemmas. During conceptualization, she realized this wasn't just her individual circumstance, but a shared female experience. She resolved to make this work about women's collective destiny in human society, not just herself. Beauvoir concluded, "One is not born, but becomes a woman," explaining how femininity becomes subordination, hence the title, The Second Sex. Published in 1949, The Second Sex became an encyclopedic manifesto and theoretical foundation for feminist movements. It remains feminism's seminal text to this day. This magnum opus comprises 2 volumes. Accordingly, I'll present this interpretation across 2 audio episodes. Part 1 audio focuses on the abstract, macro-level analysis of how women became the second sex. Beauvoir examines women's historical destiny and the systemic creation of secondary status through centuries.
Why have women been permanently confined to subordinate roles?
Thus, Part 1 fundamentally answers the why question. Part 2 audio delves into concrete case studies of women's lived experiences under this gender framework. Volume 2 primarily addresses the how question.
We'll explore how the second sex status restricts women's freedom and development in reality.
Building on this foundation, we'll address the what can be done question. How can women achieve true independence and dignity? Let's begin with Volume 1's analysis, spanning 240,000 words across 3 parts and 11 chapters, tracing women's status from primitive to modern societies. We'll focus on 3 key questions. How did women become the second sex historically? What caused female inferiority? How were women permanently fixed in secondary status throughout history? Why did formal feminist movements only emerge in the 19th century? Let's begin with the first question. Why did women become the second sex? How did this hierarchy originate? Many have heard the theory that human society began with matriarchal rule before transitioning to patriarchy.
This suggests women were initially primary, then tragically became secondary.
However, Beauvoir argues women never had a golden age. They've always been secondary from civilization's dawn. Why this claim? First, let's examine physiological differences between sexes. Beauvoir identifies biological differences as root causes of female secondary status. Many assume this refers to women's physical weakness compared to men. Statistically, women are generally shorter, lighter, and physically weaker. In physical confrontations, women usually can't overpower men. But physical disparity alone doesn't justify secondary status. Humans are animals. We create tools, use complex language, and collaborate. These traits made humans nature's rulers, despite physical limitations compared to animals. So why should physical differences subordinate women? Beauvoir argues, women's biological burden lies not in strength but reproductive functions. Most female mammals have seasonal estrous cycles without bleeding, while women menstruate monthly with potential pain. Pregnancy brings prolonged burdens, morning sickness complications, large fetal heads due to brain evolution, and narrowed pelvises from bipedalism.
Childbirth for women is far more perilous than for most mammals, even potentially fatal. Before modern contraception, most women's fate was endless childbearing until menopause.
These biological realities of reproduction weakened women's productivity and confined their mobility.
In primitive societies, women were confined to domestic labor at home.
Meanwhile, men ventured out to gather fruits and hunt animals. Thus, Stone Age established the men outside, women inside division of labor. Many believe this was equal division without hierarchy. Some even argue women held higher status as life-givers while men risked lives. But Beauvoir insists gender hierarchy. Male primacy already existed then. Why does men outside, women inside, imply female inferiority? Existentialist philosophers view human superiority in pursuing self-transcendence beyond mere survival. Humanity aims not for repetition, but surpassing current states. The revered Olympic spirit embodies this: higher, faster, stronger.
Primitive labor division confined women to repetitive, domestic, biological cycles.
Men were assigned progress and transcendence. Women maintained existing order while men forged new frontiers. Men's external activities involved greater dangers. Hunting, exploration, and warfare required life-risking courage. This risk-taking cemented male transcendence. Beauvoir argues men's risk-taking elevated them above animals and women.
Women excluded from adventures paid for relative safety with inferior status.
Beauvoir argues reproduction confined women domestically, preventing transcendent activities, key factors being fertility and domesticity. Two key concepts emerge: childbearing and household. These twin forces shaped women's historical destiny, according to Beauvoir. Paradoxically, Stone Age women appeared revered rather than subordinate. Primitives, mystified by female reproductive power, creating life and making crops grow. Small-scale primitive farming was considered domestic work, women's domain. Hence, global fertility goddess myths. Susa's great mother, Ishtar Isis, Nuetea.
Yet men remained true masters even during goddess worship eras.
Women were like nature, powerful but possessed and utilized by men. Thus, Beauvoir rejects matriarchal golden age as male-constructed myth. Male worship stemmed from practical inability to control women, not respect. Fear-motivated worship, fear of crop, failure, and lineage extinction. Women's authority came from male ignorance about agriculture and reproduction. As men mastered nature, they discovered women's irrelevance to crop fertility. With proper tools and smart labor, men could cultivate better crops themselves. Once realizing their agricultural capability, men doubted reproduction as uniquely female. They claimed reproductive power, women as mere vessels for male lineage.
Mothers were reduced to wet nurses, fathers exalted as rulers.
Men's conquest of nature solidified patriarchy's complete dominance. Let's summarize this section's key points. Women's biological role confined them to repetitive domestic reproductive cycles, while men pursued transcendence. This transcendence elevated humanity and established gender hierarchy. Male worship transitioned to domination as nature's mysteries were decoded. Now let's examine how patriarchy maintained female subjugation through history. Beauvoir identifies private property and religion as key mechanisms. As discussed, nature's conquest paralleled female subordination. Agricultural innovations and private property emerged together. Patriarchal family structures arose from property systems.
Property concepts formalized land, slaves, and women as assets. Women's fates became tied to inheritance systems and property transfers.
Patriarchal law defined women as male property, first fathers, then husbands.
Fathers held absolute rights over daughters until marital transfer.
This explains Western wedding rituals where fathers give away brides. Virginity became crucial property validation through chastity enforcement. Non-virgin brides or adulterous wives were considered catastrophic property violations. The severity lies not in harm to women, but violation of male property rights. Chastity management essentially protected economic transactions between men. Religion powerfully reinforced patriarchal property systems. Example: how religion enforced female chastity. Under patriarchy. Deuteronomy 22. A man could stone his bride if virginity wasn't proven. Religious control extended far beyond chastity regulations.
Jewish patriarchs practiced polygamy with confined domestic wives.
Leviticus classified women with livestock as male property. Church law deemed women devil's allies. St. Augustine called them unstable beasts. Beauvoir focuses on Western female history, but notes global patterns.
Ancient Chinese stereotypes. Femme fatale. Woman's heart, most poisonous.
Paradox: men despise, yet depend on women. No man wants to be female, yet all want to possess women. Beauvoir analogizes women with blacks and Jews in Western discrimination.
Women's situation resembles blacks more than Jews, needed but subjugated. Anti-Semites seek Jewish eradication. Women, like blacks, are necessary inferiors.
Women must stay in their place. What constitutes this proper position? Beauvoir identifies Christian templates: Eve and Virgin Mary. Eve was created from Adam's rib to be his companion.
A woman's existence revolves around her man.
Eve's defining act, succumbing to serpent's temptation.
God's punishment. I will make your pains in childbearing severe. Your husband will rule over you. The Old Testament's archetypal woman, shallow, subservient, suffering.
Virgin Mary, though revered, also reinforces patriarchy. Mary's virgin birth maintains male-defined purity standards. Divine conception without male involvement paradoxically upholds chastity norms. Mary embodies ideal feminine virtues, mercy, and gentleness. Contrast with masculine divine attributes: justice, courage, wisdom.
Christian duality. Eve, as fallen woman, viz. Mary, as impossible ideal.
Both models keep women subordinate to male authority.
Post-private property era, women became male chattel.
Religion and property systems institutionalized female subjugation.
The second sex must serve and obey.
Why did feminism emerge only in 19th century? Millennia of patriarchal dominance suppressed collective resistance. Historical exceptions, like female rulers, proved tokenistic. Men faced no substantial challenges from women collectively. Modern feminism formally emerged in the 19th century. Women demanded equal civil rights through vocal activism. Why then? What empowered this historical awakening? First catalyst: women entering social labor markets. Many link feminism to French Revolution's liberty, equality ideals. Beauvoir dismisses this. Nonsense. Not at all.
The Declaration of Rights addressed men's rights exclusively.
Historical. Footnote: when did human rights include women? Answer: 1995 UN. added, women's rights are human rights clause. 18th–19th century bourgeois ignored women's plight despite political rise. All political factions insisted women belong in kitchens.
Prescribed female roles, childcare, chores, enduring childbirth pains.
Working class women enjoyed more independence through labor participation. Social labor participation revolutionized women's status. Industrial Revolution's machines created labor demands exceeding male capacity. Simply put, labor shortage occurred. Women left homes for factory work en masse. Engels. Women's liberation requires mass social production, participation with minimal domestic labor. This transformation required modern industrial infrastructure. Another crucial factor: birth control developments. This marks feminism's second 19th century catalyst.
Earlier, we noted, without birth control, women's lives meant endless pregnancies.
For millennia, reproduction was left to nature's whims. Malthusianism emerged in late 18th, early 19th century West. This philosophy argued controlled population growth prevents perpetual poverty. Malthusianism popularized abortion and contraception methods. Women finally escaped biological determinism through bodily autonomy. Recall Beauvoir's original thesis about biological entrapment. Remember the dual shackles: reproduction and domesticity. Industrial labor participation and contraception began dismantling these chains. This initiated, but didn't complete, gender equality progress.
From day one, systemic gender pay gaps existed.
Beauvoir attributed this to women's limited bargaining power and supplemental income roles. Mere workforce entry was revolutionary then.
Pay disparities seemed trivial compared to workplace access. This trivial gap maintained economic inequality. This small disparity kept women psychologically homebound. This minor issue cast shadows over early feminism. These shadows persist through modern times.
We'll explore this in depth in Volume 1, I, of the Second Sex. Let's summarize this section's key points. Industrialization and Malthusian population control enabled women's social participation. Formal feminist movements emerged in the 19th century. This concludes our discussion of Volume 1's core arguments.
Women were biologically shackled by reproduction and domesticity, institutionalized as male property through cultural systems.
19th century feminism began addressing these systemic inequalities.
While progress exists, true gender equality remains elusive.
Can women achieve genuine equality? What would that require? These questions drive Beauvoir's and our continued exploration. These inquiries form Volume 1. I central focus. Recall our framework. Volume 1 explains why. Volume 1, I addresses how and what next. Volume I shifts from macro history to micro case studies. We'll examine women's lived experiences and explore solutions. With Beauvoir, we'll ask, what paths does society offer women?
What truly constrains female freedom?
Most crucially, how can women achieve self-actualization? Stay tuned for our continued exploration.